Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. I'm very excited today because I have my dear friend, Cindy Ashton, Khoury Ashton, here with us today. Cindy, I'd love for you to tell the world what you do, who you are. Welcome.
Hello, Alice. I know I consider you a dear friend too. You are badass at everything to do with negotiation and mediation and all that jazz. I mean, truly, I've been in this business for almost 30 years and I'm like, oh yeah, she's beyond the real deal, like way beyond the real deal. So I am an award-winning television host, singer, actor, dancer, and you're probably going, wait, how does this have to do with negotiation and mediation? Well, I have another business called Speak From Your Power. And what it has to do with is, as a professional actor, as a dancer, as a singer, being on television, it's all about the story that you tell. It's all about the energy you create. It's all about engaging people and persuading that audience to fall in love with you, to get angry with you, to hate your character, to love your character. And so today, Alice is going to tell you what we're going to be talking about, but we're definitely going to be tackling a little bit of that.
Yes, and I love that both Cindy and I have a theater background, and so a lot of the skills that we pick up in theater directly translate to negotiation. So you'll hear a little bit more about that. But today I wanted to ask Cindy about negotiating speaker contracts.
Yeah.
And sort of what are all the things beyond money that a speaker should be asking for?
Yeah, I love this topic because a lot of people come to me for speaker strategy and optimizing their speaker materials and how do I get gigs. And I love working on that piece. And almost every speaker that comes to me says, I just want to get high paid speaking gigs. I want to get that $10,000 fee, that $20,000 fee. And I'm like, great, but what if you can make $50,000 or $100,000 at a free gig without having to do any slimy sales tactics, right? And they're like, what? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples so that you start to see where I'm going, and then I'm going to go in more detail. So it was, I don't know when, 2018, 2019. Somebody came to me. I was living in the US at the time. Too excited. Somebody came to me and they said, can you fly up to Toronto and speak for my group? And I said, great, what's the fee? She says, oh, there's no fee, but you can sell off the stage. And I was like, so I'm paying all my expenses. And I mean, my family's in Toronto, so I mean, I'm going to go anyways. But I'm paying all my expenses and I'm speaking for free. And I'm a 25 plus year seasoned speaker at this point, or 20 years. And so it was beautiful because I turned that free gig that I paid to go to into close to $100,000. So how did I do that? So I said, listen, I need to make sure that this is the right crowd, because here's the thing, free is not free if you are in front of the right crowd that is your ideal clientele and you know how to negotiate and what's important. So I said, I have a new program that I am launching. If you can sell me at least 4 spots at $1,500, something like that, then I will repurpose a little bit of that money to come to Toronto and say thank you to you and do it that way. She ended up selling out like 6 or 7 spots. So before I even got to the gig, I had already made 7,500-ish. I'm doing my math now, right? So then the other thing I negotiated in is I said, before we get to the gig, before, March, April, what I want you to do is I have a beautiful video series on when you're at conferences, how to network, how to use your voice, how to use body language. And it's a really great value for them. Can you do an email blast ahead of time? She said, sure. Well, then I just list built. I made a list build. I got about 200 new people on my list that I can now market to. And then great thing is that most of them have watched all these videos. When I walked in the door, people were like, oh, Cindy, you're that woman from those great video series. I love that. So they already had a know, like, and trust with me, which means I don't have to really sell them when I get on the stage. I could just do a very simple offer because they've already fallen in love with me. I've already built trust with them in 3 different videos. So then I got on stage, I did my thing. I did a very short close because you really don't need to close if you build in story and you build in that trust. And I had a few people buy tickets to come to New York to my live event. At that live event, I sold 80,000, no, it was $40,000 worth. Was it 40 or 60,000? Somewhere, it was a few years ago, people. But it was between 40 to $60,000 of a high-end program. So Alice, let me ask you and your listeners, is that worth it to do a free gig and pay to get there?
Absolutely. It definitely is. I mean, I
Yeah.
think what is really important is sort of what you touched on, which is when people come and they say, well, like, I want this higher fee. And I love how you think of other things that bring value to you, right? Like you mentioned, sending out an email prior to your talk to the audience. Like that is a negotiation to say, if I come and talk, can you please send out an email that I'm crafting with an offer to the audience?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what are
Yeah.
some of the other things that people should be negotiating?
Yeah. So first of all, when you get a paid speaking gigs, like a corporate gig, something like that, a lot of people stop at their fee. They're like, oh, I'm getting paid $5,000 for this gig. And that's it. Did you know that most corporations have money in many other budgets? And some people say, yeah, Cindy, I knew that. You know, I can ask them to buy my books. And I'm like, yes, and there's more departments than you're thinking. So one of the things you want to start to poke your nose around is where else you can make money. So there's often training and development departments they could have you for the keynote for 10,000, but you can do things with surveys that you survey the audience before. You survey the audience after how they grew, and then in your recap with the decision maker, with the HR manager, whoever, you get her feedback, his feedback, you share feedback and say, listen, I did a comparison of the before and after, and this is how they grew. But in that survey, you're also asking them, what else do you need? And say, listen, I saw that they're really struggling with this piece that we didn't get to do at the conference, in the breakout, at the keynote. Would you be open to, having me come in and do training? Or they don't have budget at all for you to speak, but maybe they have budget to have you come train. So you get to do both. It's like, I will waive my keynote fee for the training. So they're called reinforcement options in your contract. So you want to be able to look at like the training budgets, see where, the buying of the books, sponsorships. This is a big one where people miss. Is that a lot of these bigger corporations and some small have major sponsors. So it could be, hey, so let's say your fee is 10,000 and they say, Cindy, I really want you to come, or Alice, I really want you to come in. Our fee is, 5,000. Then Alice would respond, thank you so much for that offer. As you mentioned, your audience is struggling with XYZ and you want me to come in and do this. Is that right? Well, my standard fee is 10,000. Do you have any extra budget at all? No, Alice, we really don't. Well, if we were find alternative ways to fill that extra $5,000 gap, would you be open to that? And everybody says yes.
Right.
And you're putting yourself in the position of power. So this is where you start to poke into what are the other things that you can negotiate? What other budgets are available? So going back to sponsors, it could be, hey, I noticed that, Flashy Juice, I'm just making up a brand, Flashy Delicious Juice is one of your main sponsors. Do you think that they might sponsor, buying 200 books and I have a book signing event at the event, like a book signing booth. And so it's a great way, and I can include some kind of bookmarks with their thing, whatever. And that's a great way. They're like, well, let's ask the sponsor if they're willing to spend $3,000 on books, and to have a dedicated booth. So you just have to find out. I mean, I've been in situations with clients and myself where, because I asked a lot of the right questions, I knew that the media was coming. And I asked, and I said, hey, I know that National Post, this was when I lived in Canada, is coming. Would you be open to, to fill the gap, get me an interview while I'm there, have them interview me? Then there's been lots of times, like Investment News, I ended up on TV with them. I ended up getting a full page ad with them. Like there is so much stuff, other ways, but part of it is asking the right questions before you negotiate so you know what their assets are.
Got it. And then also I'm curious if you've ever negotiated, let's say that they only can come in at 5,000 and you're normally, like you said, is at 10,000. Have you personally negotiated like being a sponsor, that's part of it, that they can put your name out saying sponsored by for free because they're only paying you $5,000. So it would be $5,000 plus putting your name up as a sponsor, basically an ad.
Yeah, so I personally haven't done that, but I think that's a great idea. You can absolutely do that and position you as the big sponsor, and then they can give you different publicity within that, which is brilliant. Normally, along the same lines, what I'll do is I will say, listen, I want to be the featured name, or I want to be positioned in this way, and I want to be on these flyers, and I want to be in these email blasts. So, but I love that as an idea. That's one that I have not thought of. So that's great, Alice. Well done. Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was interesting that you mentioned to me a while back was negotiating like a table or a booth in a high traffic area.
Yes, let's talk about that. So some people think I'm brilliant. Some people think I'm a pain in the ass. I'm both. Because I will literally say, hey, I've negotiated, like I remember there was a real estate company in Canada, and they had a giant floor, and they had those booths that they were selling for $5,000. And they could only pay me, I think, like $1,500, which is so low compared to where I'm at. And I ended up negotiating a corner booth, and it was brilliant because it was an extra $5,000. It was a $5,000 booth that I would have had to pay for that I didn't have to pay for. And that's a great way to do lead generation and more publicity. I mean, it's a great, do book signings, gather leads. So yeah, you can negotiate all those things. But going back to the high traffic area, what I do, if a table or a booth is included, I ask for the
tent,
the floor plan. And I look to see where the dead spots are, where the bathroom is, where the drink line is, and I go in the high traffic areas because that's where people are lingering. They just had a drink, they're lingering, but you also have to make sure they're not lingering and blocking the booth either. But, you want to position yourself and say, hey, I want to be here, because all that stuff matters. Because I've seen people who negotiate that stuff in, and you got to go through 3 corners to find them.
Right.
So I am very anal that way, brilliant and anal at the same time, because where you're positioned matters.
So if someone were to get a request of a floor plan, high traffic areas, would it be near the restroom and near the entrance? Like, sort of, where are those if someone were to look at it for the first time, a floor plan?
Yeah.
And they have to determine on their own so that they can ask for that high traffic area, what should people be looking for?
Yeah, I would definitely be looking to, if the bathrooms are now outside the room, most of the time the bathrooms are outside the room. Unless, of course, the booths are outside the room. So you want to be closer to the bathrooms. You want to be closer to where there's food and drinks, because that's where people are lingering. But you won't want to be so close that they're blocking. But it's great because when there's lineups, they're looking at your booth in line.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then also I want to talk a little bit about negotiating, whether it's professional photographic shots of you speaking or maybe even video, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that might be valuable especially if you're a beginner speaker or you're early on in your career and you don't have a lot of footage of you doing speaking is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you've brought this up, because even if you're not a beginner or mid-level, you always want to get new footage of yourself. So you want to add that in there, that if somebody is filming, that you go ahead and that you get a copy of the raw footage. And sometimes it's tricky, as you have found with some of your own speaking engagements, but it's really important to get this. You want to get this. But I also negotiate in, again, the photography, like if whatever they have as assets, video, photography, you want those assets. The other thing you also want to do is negotiate in your contract that you can bring somebody for free who's an assistant. This is another place where it is going to pay off for you in spades. First of all, when you come off a stage, you're going to be celebrity, you're going to have 10 million people on you, somebody's going to drain your energy or act inappropriately while you've got somebody who's a buyer and they're not getting to you. So by having somebody who is a guard, an extra person, he or she is able to say, hey, listen, we've got a line. Let me take your name and number, what you want. And they are the distraction. They're your handler. So you want to keep that moving, because I've seen so many speakers lose sales because they don't have a handler. The other thing you want your handler to do is be a little bit obnoxious. And I do this for my clients when I go to see them speak. I just do this and then I get in trouble after. So I literally go on backstage and I do behind the scenes shots. So as you're speaking, I get the different angles, and you want, even if they've got a photographer, they're not getting all the angles.
Right.
So you literally want, and the behind the scenes shots, especially if it's a bigger stage and there's lights on there and you see the audience, it's sexy as shit. So you want to get them like behind. So I was like crouching, I was up, like I do this for my clients all the time. It's so much fun. But you want to get those behind the scenes shots. You want to go with that in front, you want to get beyond, below, again, above, you want to go at the back of the room. You want that person, you want to just make a list of shots of all the different things that they're doing. You want to get it from the side, wherever you can get those shots, because those are the money shots. And get them to also do some B-roll and film it. Oh my God, I'm thinking in French right now. I live in France, in case people are wondering.
You mean portrait? In a portrait?
A portrait. I always think of it as a hot dog or a hamburger. This is the hot dog. This is the hamburger. But you want to get some of those little videos, so they're really great for TikToks, if TikTok stays in America. So not funny. Instagram, which we know will stay in America. We want to make sure that we have that B-roll that we could use, because B-roll videos are magical. So not just photography, but while you're behind that stage, you want to get that B-roll going, because you can then overlay the B-roll with, the top 3 ways to have better sex. And then as the B-roll is running, you could tell the story. So you always want to have a handler that is going to be your person. But if you could hire somebody professionally, that's better. But if not, you got to get somebody really reliable, really responsible. You got to give them a list. Be anal about it.
Now, I'm just curious. So when you're negotiating to get, this handler to be able to come in for free with you, are you also negotiating like flight for them and accommodations for them? Is that all part of your negotiation?
No. So what I do is I tell my clients, and again, if depending on how much money you're making, if you're making a lot of money, spend the money on a professional handler. But I find I get a lot of the people who are rock stars, like they're already 6 figures, already rock star experts, but they're not seasoned as a speaker. So they come to me and they're like, okay, I'm seasoned in my business. How do I get in these stages? They don't have that extra budget to do that, because they're not getting paid the 10 grand when they're starting out. So what I do is if they're local, that's really easy. You've got tons of friends. If they're not local, you ask the meeting planner. Can I bring somebody? Do you happen to have somebody that could be a volunteer? If not, then use your circles. If you're on LinkedIn, if you want to be a really great speaker in terms of really get a lot of gigs, you need to be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the first place where meeting planners look to check you out, is LinkedIn. So you can definitely start to see, who else is in the area, who's willing to volunteer. Use your connections. Otherwise, you can do that. You can fly somebody in if you really want to, or you can hire somebody on TaskRabbit.
Got it. Okay, those are all really good points. And, I wanted to go back to the video, because I did some negotiation with video, and it's like they say, the devil's in the details, because initially they said, sure, we can provide video of you speaking, but then they sent back the contract, and in the terms it said, we own and control this video, and we have to put our stamp on the video, and et cetera, et cetera. So I had to go back and push back on those terms and say, actually, I want to do whatever I want with this video. It's me speaking, and I want to be able to put it up wherever I want, because they wanted to control where it goes up. And they said something like, you can't edit it and put it up online. So I had to negotiate and say, I want to be able to edit it. I want to be able to put it on social media, on my website. I want to own the video of me speaking. So sometimes you have to go back. So don't think just because they send you a contract with the terms that the terms are still not negotiable. You can always go back and say, hey, we need to fix these terms, because I am not in agreement with these.
Yeah. Alice, I love that you're talking about that, because one of the things I forgot to mention that is super, super important is that when it comes to video, You also need to know if they're filming, because what happens if they go and distribute that video or sell that video and you're not getting paid on that? That is your work.
Yes.
So my clients, like Alice is a former client of mine and now dear friend. I feel like I fall in love with all my clients. I still have clients from almost 30 years ago that I'm friends with. But the point is that I gave her a sample speaker contract. And in there, I gave her, and I do this for all my clients, of like, here's a legal languaging. And then I always say, but I'm not a lawyer, so check with a lawyer, but I'm just giving you a sample. So, but it's important to understand how that video is being used, because if they go, let's say it's like a big company or whatever, and they go sell that, and they've just made $50,000 off the sales of the videos.
Yep.
You got nothing for that? That's a
Right.
problem.
Right. So that basically means that when you're getting information, having those pre-conversations, like you mentioned, when you're asking a lot of those questions, you also want to find out, by the way, are you normally going to be filming me anyway? And if you are filming it, what is happening? How are you distributing it? Is it going out for free to your members, or are you selling it? So these are questions that you need to ask, even if you're not negotiating. You're trying to learn, like you said, what are the assets, and if it's a future asset of we're going to make a lot of money off of your content, then you probably need to know that, and it needs to go in there whether you allow it or you don't allow it, or you want some cut of it or what have you. So those are definitely good, because if you don't ask, then you don't know, and all of a sudden someone is off with your content making money without your awareness.
Yeah.
These are really excellent points. I think they're super helpful for anyone who is in the speaking world. So, I'm looking forward to people really like hearing from you. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or work with you, can you talk a little bit about an ideal client and then how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my ideal clients are like the Alices of the world. You're super established. So you're not just, if you're just starting out in your business, we're not a good fit. But if you're somebody who is somebody like an Alice, who is multiple 6-7 figures or beyond, and you're like, I'm badass at what I do, and I want to get on bigger stages, and I want my expertise to go out to more people, that's a really good avatar for me. The second one that I get, a group of people that I really get, are people who are, I tend to also get the people who have like billion-dollar companies, who are like they're like closet people who are like, I'm a billionaire and I've done all this stuff and I don't know how to get out there. So I guess it really is the same person. It's a person who is super established. They have a proven track record, and I'm able to really position. I can create their entire platform, tell them what markets they need to do, how to do it, how to market themselves, how to put together their LinkedIn, because most people's LinkedIn is not actually positioned correctly for you to land speaking engagements. And then people who go, I'm a sought after speaker. And I'm like, please stop saying that, because there's nothing in your marketing that tells me that you're sought after. People can smell bullshit in a second. So yeah, that really is my ideal clientele. The person who truly is super established, has a unique expertise, wants to be able to spread that expertise, but they really do have to be very established, or else I'm not interested. And they have to be innovative, really changing the world, or again, I'm not interested. If you're not changing the world, I'm not interested.
Right. And I think you're also very heart-centered, right? You're very authentic, right? And you want people who are showing up in the world authentically. At least that's how I relate to you. I feel like you're very authentic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We need more real in the world.
Yes. And do people like find you on LinkedIn, or what's the best way for people to connect with you?
For that stuff, because most of my social media is my performer, Cindy, and TV hosting, Cindy. So I would definitely go to my LinkedIn. It's super easy. Just go /Cindy Ashton.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Cindy, is there anything else that you want to promote? Anything that you have upcoming projects that you want to talk about before we end?
Yeah, so aside from my business, which I've had for almost 30 years now, I definitely have to do a big party for that one. On the other side of my business, I have a show called Liberated, and It is a one-woman musical show, and Alice saw the first version, and now we're developing it into a much bigger show with dance routines and all kinds. It's getting bigger, and we're going to be touring it across couple of cities in America, one in Canada, being Canadian, and here in Europe. So far, we've got London and Portugal, and Paris. So the whole thing is like being built at this moment. So there's also that is available if you are loving shows that is about freedom and finding and the rights of people and equality and standing up for every human winning.
That's wonderful. And I know that you had them available online before. Are they only going to be in-person performances, or can people...
Somebody can see on demand. So the on demand, you can just click a button and you can get it immediately. So
Perfect. Yes, I highly encourage people, if you're in one of the cities where Cindy is going to be, to catch her live, because her shows are really amazing and very profound and deeply touching. And I was able to watch it online because I'm very far away from where Cindy is, and even watching it online, it was very moving. So definitely try to catch it. If you're not in one of those cities, catch it online. And so it's, again, Cindy's show is called Liberated. And when is it coming out? Like, when are you starting the world tour?
Yeah, so May 28th is my 50th birthday. And I'm so public about that because, women, when we get to 50, they're like, oh, she's dead and gone. I'm like, listen, stand back, bitches. So we're going to kick off, tentatively, we're going to kick off in LA and have the whole grand red carpet and all that jazz. And it's going to be very immersive. So in addition to the show, we're doing some immersive, really cool stuff as people come in. And yeah, so it's going to kick off in LA on May 28th, my birthday, my 50th. And so that's what we're doing. And if you want to know more about that, that's at cindyashton.com/liberate me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being my guest, Cindy. This is my pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Yay. And thanks everybody for watching. Wishing you a beautiful and blessed day.
Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you once again for tuning into another episode of Negotiate with Alice.